Okay. So it sounded like you guys kind of started the meeting, huh?
Well, just in an informal fashion, Dick. This gentleman, well, what's the agenda lineup, Colleen?
Well, the agenda is we've got 15 minutes to do our rules,
Oh, that's right. Let's do that first, Dick.
and we don't have Lee here.
Well, why don't we talk to this gentleman before Lee shows up?
Now, what is this about? We can do it. It's on the agenda, I think.
And
What is it that we're talking about?
Well, he's moving into Hallen's Mini Mart, the old Bumpy space, which is next to the Verizon store.
Okay, I saw that. In fact, there were three things. There's a sketch, a couple licenses and a couple sketches, but to open up a food place, Lynn would have to do an inspection first. This is brand new. This one has to be submitted and go over materials, the construction and sinks and what they're doing. So the proper way to do this is for you to get in touch with Lynn and have Lynn do the inspection to make sure that before we grant any kind of license, that it meets the requirement. Is this only a dry goods store? They're not preparing any food?
No food made on the premise. It's all like canned goods or a little bit of grocery items like seasonings and.
Though I think he's going to do dairy, Dick. I think he's going to sell refrigerated dairy.
So he'd have to check to see what the refrigeration is like. Although this is different than a food prep
Yes.
system. That's not, you're not dealing with sinks and dishes, so you're not doing any dishes or anything that utensils.
No hot food served here, not even cold cuts or nothing like that.
Yeah. In fact, I'm looking, it looks like the ceiling that you have in there is probably not a cleanable kind of ceiling. It looks like an acoustic ceiling.
Ceiling tiles, yeah.
Yeah. So but if you're not making any food, then if there's nothing exposed, then that's a different story.
Right. Yeah. And years ago, there was a refrigerator in the rear right. Is that still there, the big refrigerator, or was that taken out?
No, I could actually show you around the store a little bit.
Yeah. Why don't we let him do that, Dick?
Okay.
Well, we
Yeah, if you
could,
could,
but Lynn is the one that would be doing that. She's
Right. Just
she's
on
the proper person to do that.
Yeah,
So I can
preliminary.
give you an idea of the stuff that we're
Yeah, just walk us around if you would.
Okay. So we have two coolers. One's like I don't know if you can see that. The countertop cooler. And then this one will have more of the like waters, Gatorade, stuff like that. And then a little bit of snacks items right here. And canned goods.
Almost like a Cumberland Farms without the food prep.
Yeah, more like CVS kind of, like more.
Yeah.
So like you have your sauces, you have your ketchups, mustards.
Or Dollar General would be that way probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then a lot of household goods, toothpaste, mouthwash, dishwasher stuff, more body stuff, body wash, deodorants, baby diapers, Ziploc bags, trash bags, cleaning
So
supplies.
what do we do on Bill on this one, just to let this gentleman move on? Do we approve this one subject to Lynn inspecting it?
Yeah. Yes.
So I've got, on this one, we've got, let's see what we have. Retail food, milk, and I didn't see, Colleen, I didn't see the one for retail food. I got one for milk and tobacco. Now, this one doesn't exceed our tobacco license. We've got a tobacco license that's available.
yes, this would be the number 6.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have the the retail and the milk. I don't know. I did do that. I don't know if that, you didn't get that file or not in the tobacco.
I'm just looking at, there, I have them stapled together. Let me just
Yeah.
see
Dick,
what I have.
wait, Lee's here. Good evening, Lee.
Hi, Lee, how are you?
Bill, how are you? Good
Good,
evening, Dick.
good.
How's everybody?
Good,
Good.
good. What we're just doing is down at Five Corners, with this gentleman is trying to reopen what is basically a packaged food and a little grocery store kind of set up with no food prep at all, no open food at all, and just going over what he would end up needing, and I'm just going through my list, which is out of order now because let me just see where the licenses that Colleen got. What I have for licenses, Colleen, and maybe I don't have them. I've got the food establishment plan review, and I'm guessing this is not a food establishment. This is
No, but on there, there's a spot for if it's like a retail store. So I just
yeah.
had him put his information in
Okay,
that.
that's fine. And I've got one permit that's for sale of tobacco. And then I've got another permit that is, okay, licensed to sell retail food. And let me see if I missed I guess I don't see the one for milk. Is there one here that I just don't have and it's already filled out?
Yes,
Colleen?
I do have one. Yes, yes.
Okay. So are we at a spot that Bill and Lee that we approve these subject to Lynn's inspection?
Yes.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay, so that's what we'll do. So you have to get back in touch with Colleen and Lynn and have her get in, and when Lynn inspects it, she then has the authorization to get you up and running.
Oh, perfect.
Okay?
Okay. And then, so just go down to the town hall again and try to schedule a date.
I'll,
Yeah, actually, you
yeah.
can give Colleen a call.
Okay. Okay.
You don't have to make a trip down.
Okay.
So that's it.
And good luck with your business.
Thank you so
Yeah, good
much.
luck.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
Thank you. You
Now,
too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
for tonight, we were gonna look at just two things, two documents for our rules. Although before we start, we don't have to make a decision tonight, but it might be worthwhile, but at least to think about, because it's gonna come up. And a couple of the installers have said, we've got two regulations that they think are unreasonable and give them some hard time. One of them is the 100 feet between the septic tank to the well versus 50 with the state. And as I remind people, that particular regulation came about 40 plus years ago, maybe. And it was from Franny DeWitt, who found a well that was contaminated, and it was contaminated because of a septic tank. Now, when I look at, I just put on the table, it could be that was an art cement septic tank, because Franny told me it was a broken septic tank.
Mhm.
And it could have been in gravel, and it could have been everything could have been in the water table.
Mhm.
So the question is, with what we have right now, is that a reasonable, with tanks the way they're made now, is that in fact a reasonable request? Is it really doing anything for anybody to be the 100 feet?
So the motion on the table, Dick, is to waive or rescind that requirement?
Well, I was just saying, as we go through and look at our regulations, is that one that we, when we get to it, that we say, you know, this one doesn't make any sense.
I'd entertain that.
Lee, what is your thinking?
Well, yeah, given the parameters that you mentioned about better tanks, two compartment, and more regulations pertaining to separation of water table and so forth, it makes sense to entertain the state's code of 50 feet. I mean, I guess,
So-
you know, there's no harm done, I don't think, in the 100, but I don't know how that makes anyone's life more difficult. Unless we're talking about the difference between maybe the 2% pitch they can't reach in a long distance and the force of the pump chamber, maybe, I don't know.
Maybe
that's
it's
the
a,
argument.
maybe it's a thing that you say, you know, if we can do the 100, unless there's a reason not to do the 100, you do the 100, and that we could go to 50 if there's, you know, if someone says, gee, I can't maintain the tank, I can't, you know, there's a reason, and you
Right.
say, okay, so we do a policy kind of thing versus the regulation, but we allow it to vary it for reason. That's another way to look at it.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
little
that makes sense, too.
alternatives analysis, that's fine.
The next one that they complained about is, and it kind of goes with the difference, the water table separation issue, where last week, Bill, you said, or last meeting, you said, hey, let's be talking about that. We said 3 feet, and maybe that's not a good number. And I certainly, when I read all the stuff that, excuse me, that you put out,
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
gave to us,
did you see what we sent out today, the Connecticut code, Dick?
I didn't read that.
Okay, there's some extremely insightful stuff in the Connecticut code that I won't even elaborate on right now, but it's just,
Okay.
it's bizarre. It's completely bizarre. Yeah.
Okay. But certainly after you sent that stuff out, Bill, it would seem prudent that 2 feet versus 3 feet is a more reasonable number for separation. You could argue that maybe it's only 15 inches or 18 inches, but if you're just saying 3 feet, 3 certainly seems like a lot, but compared to what you need. But the other that people are asking about is the 100 feet to the wetlands. And that question came out is, if you've already got a lot of separation vertically to protect the, you know, on systems, to protect from viruses and bacteria, and nothing helps it in terms of the nitrogen, then is 100 feet any better than 50 feet? And that's definitely in your world, Phil.
Yeah, I guess there's two issues. One is the regulatory side and two is the science side. So we would have to take a look at both avenues before we come up with a game plan on that one.
Yeah.
I would suggest we do a regulatory review on both the Title V and the wetland regs end of it and other documents available. And then let's look at the science. Let's look at the biology.
Okay, then we should, maybe you
That's
can take that for an assignment before
Yeah.
the next meeting, because that's not on, I don't think that's on these two documents. So let's go look at the documents. It's already 7 o'clock. We used up the first one, And I think if we look at local upgrades to Title V inspections, there are 8 of them that are there. And it's a Title V inspections must be witnessed by a representative of the Granby Board of Health. Is that a regulation that we want?
Yeah, well, that was, we initiated that back in the 90s.
Right. I think it's one that's
That's good.
necessary.
Yes.
Yes.
Lee, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that solves more problems than it creates in the scheduling, as far as new Title V companies that may be floating in and out, and whether or not there's some questions that we can hopefully answer on site. I think it's something that we should try to stick with.
Now, the next one is actually, before we go into this, I witnessed what is it, 6 Wood Avenue, that perk test where the argument about,
The
I
deep
was-
hole, yeah.
yeah. And I went along with what Neil said about the condition of the tank. We went in, first of all, someone had put in, these were drop-in baffles, and it looks like someone put in drop-in baffle replacements that maybe the last time it was pumped. Now, code doesn't say that when you have a baffle problem, you put in drop-in concrete baffles. And Neil told me, oh, Clean Septic cast those things themselves. You have no idea what kind of concrete. You have no idea how old it is. You don't know anything about those baffles. So these were in, and they said, well, the baffles that you see aren't bad. They're okay, so you don't violate any rules. Well, the last time someone was in there, certainly they replaced the baffle with what the code says you're going to put in T's. And so that's not what was there. The tank was down, I don't know, 2 feet, something. And when you went to try to dig the tank up, you can't. Everybody there saying, oh, it's unreasonable to try to look at this tank. And all we did is they had clean out towers in it, and you could get around where the baffles are and the pump out, and you say, oh, the tank looks good, but and it felt hard, but you could see a total, what we saw is a total of maybe 2 square feet of the tank you could look at, because it's down in the ground, and everybody's saying, oh, we don't want to dig everything up. This is terrible. Look at, and so we looked at I looked at the inlet. The inlet looked good, but even that, they say, well, we don't want to dig down and make everything all messed up around this tank. And so now and then Neil was going to get, after I left, they were going to pump it out, and Neil was going to take a mirror 3 feet down in the ground, the mirror and a flashlight, and say, oh, I'm going to be able to determine all what it's like inside this tank. So my concern is that there's no one going to tear this thing up the way it needs to be torn up to find out if it's really good. I'm still when we get to talk about it, I'm still of the opinion that these 40 and 50-year-old tanks are, unless you really, someone's going to say, I'm going to destroy my lawn in that area, and I'm going to spend all this money to inspect it and really inspect it right. Just saying this piece of, 3-inch thick concrete buried for 40 or 50 years is okay. And you don't know what people have dumped in it. You don't know anything about these things. So I'm concerned when we get to it. But I could feel the pressure. I'm guessing, Lee, you must feel it all the time that people are saying, hey, I don't really, we're going to do the best we can to to see whether the tank's good enough, but no one is anxious to be digging these things up. So
I don't know if they're trying to maximize their time in and out. Because when you do, I guess when you do a Title V, it's a flat rate. Let's say it's $10. Whether it takes you 20 minutes or 6 hours, it's still $10.
Right.
So the quicker you can get in and out, the more you make. And I don't know whether or not there is some type of a half-baked relationship with the homeowner. I
There's a
mean, I
question.
hope not.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Hey, Dick, did they dig up all 3 ports, the center port and the 2 end ports, or just one port?
they did all, I saw all 3 ports, and that they, you had their pump out, the towers they had in there were, I'm guessing they were a foot in diameter. So that's what you could see. You could see that at the bottom of the 3.
So they had concrete well tiles over the tank?
They weren't, they were plastic.
Well, they're plastic. See, that's newer. That's fairly new then. Those are new.
Right. So I'm guessing that when they did that 5 years ago, someone must have put those in.
Yeah.
Okay. But
And Greg
certainly,
gave me, and what Greg said is, I said, you put these towers in there, you put those tubes in, so you can get up there and you can get at them and pump them. And I said, but they're down in the bottom. You got a little hole at the bottom of in the ground. And Greg said, oh, the reason Title V has that is they say it so you can inspect it. Oh yeah, you can inspect it. You can inspect the water level. You can, but trying to do anything significant through a hole 2 feet, and that, in fact, I'm guessing the baffle is, I don't know, 8 inches square, 10 inches square, something like that. So you don't have a very big hole there. So anyway, when we come down to the point of saying whether we want these tanks replaced, we should be at least thinking about it. Because, in fact, here's the next one. Number 2 on this one is septic tanks must be, I say, empty to determine internal condition. Now, that's a bad thing because empty isn't defined. So if you were going to say, you could say it must be pumped, or pumped to as empty as possible, or pumped in a way that you make it enforceable. A normal must be normally pumped out as normal, or something, if you want to say it at all. Otherwise, you say let the tanks be full, and then you don't see anything below the water line.
and certainly what I've seen, and as I'm sure you 2 guys have seen with some older tanks, is that when we dig out at least the outlet side of the tank, that's usually where the spalling of the concrete, if that's the right term, is at its most significant, and that's usually where there will be either a crack or some bulging of the concrete, which is indicative, of course, of a fail. But the funny thing is, when these guys are on site and they have these backhoes and different hydraulic equipment, it's a 5-minute discovery to go through the motion, and it saves the new homeowner all sorts of aggravation.
I think what it is a lot of these guys know that they're essentially dealing with an eggshell. And if they crack the eggshell, no pun intended, then they got to pay for it. So the homeowner will say, listen, if you damage my tank during this inspection process, guess who's paying for the new tank? And they're pointing their finger at the inspector. That's the problem, Dick. So it's a liability
good point.
transfer problem.
Well, so Bill, that being said, how does the liability work if Dick or you or I are on site and say, we cannot, continue the Title V until we expose the outlet side of the tank?
Yeah, that's the quandary. The homeowner has to agree that this inspection is gonna be done at risking damaging the tank. And if they don't want to agree to that premise, that's fine. Replace the tank, period. End
Well,
of
that's right.
discussion.
That's the,
That's the option.
I-
Either
I
don't
think
get
you're
up or
right,
just
because
replace it.
That's the way
I
to
mean,
do it.
and that's been the same issue, Dick, that you fell victim to today all the time. That on these older tanks, there's always a pushback, which is okay. I don't, it doesn't bother me. But I don't see why the backhoe operator would be voicing the loudest argument about not doing it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well,
Other
because
than,
the
like you said,
homeowner
Bill.
probably told him before everybody showed up, if you damage my tank, you're gonna be buying me a new tank. So they probably put the bug in the guy's ear.
well, maybe, but if you look at the way the system's set up, Lee, I think you called it, is that the backhoe operator, in many cases, that you could see the backhoe operator may even be the inspector. But
Sure.
it's in the homeowner's interest not to see what that is, that's what it's like. And it's the backhoe or the inspector says, I don't want to spend any more time than I have to here. Let's just pass this on. And that's what my discussion was with both Neil and Greg, saying, guys, Title V says that you guys have to be certifying this tank is good. Now, how do you do it? They say, well, you don't have to look inside of it. And I like to remind them of the one that's the very expensive house on Bittersweet Lane that the inspector told me, I don't want to pump it. And I said, you're going to pump it. And when it was done, he said, Dick, I have to say you were right. When I pumped it, I found out that they hit ledge and they never put the bottom of the tank in. He says it was only the top half of the tank that was in the ground.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good install.
well,
Well,
anyway,
But again,
so we are past.
standard practice is they pump the tank and they look in the tank with a mirror and a flashlight. That's standard practice. It may not be perfect. It may be terrible practice, but my understanding is that's standard practice. You go to court, argue that to the jury, that is a reasonable protocol that will stand up in court, in my opinion. But if they don't pump the tank and the thing's full of water, that's really bad practice, Dick.
Right.
Really
So
bad.
so that rule should stay then.
Yes.
Lee, are you?
Yeah.
I'm not at the what?
The thing I've been doing as well, which gets some people upset, but it doesn't bother me, is that on the outlet side of the tank, more often than not, I'll borrow the probe and I'll shoot it across at an angle into the concrete a little below the outlet pipe. And on some of these tanks, it's so fragile that the probe will go through with hardly any effort on my part at all.
Wow. Through the concrete. Wow.
Verify the tank,
Wow.
verify its water. So, yeah, it's just, and maybe some guys now, that when I show up, and I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but some guys just accept everything out, then they anticipate, my next question is to poke it with the probe. And when that happens, then we will dig about a foot away with the backhoe and hand dig the remaining area to really see what's going on. And oftentimes, and not at that point in time, we end up with a new tank. And my guess is that after, the first 2 or 3 with the same inspector, they're going to stop whining about it and just go along with it.
Yeah.
I hope. Because the thing too is that if something goes south and they inadvertently, by error, pass this on to a new homeowner, they don't want the phone call about what they didn't do 6 or 9 months ago.
Right.
I would hope.
Well,
Well,
I guess
that one
I-
didn't say.
Let's leave that one as it is.
Okay. I have empty,
Yeah.
but we'll change it to pump. They
Okay. Yeah.
pumped or empty, I guess, because I guess.
Why
if
don't
you
you
had a new-
say pump to an empty state? That's
Oh, yeah,
the safest way to word that.
yeah. Okay. The next one is, do we do this? With the septic tank under 1,500 gallons must be replaced with a 1,500 gallon tank or larger. Do we keep that or do we not keep it? My
Well,
feeling
that's
is that we
commensurate
do
with-
keep them.
That's commensurate with the age of the tank.
Yeah, because
So
you
if
know,
some-
they're all at least 40 years old.
So say someone has 1,000, in what instance would someone have 1,000-gallon tank that's in excellent condition?
I saw one today, or this week. Not today, this week. That I said probably, but I don't know that. But if you say, if our goal is to replace the 90% of them that are no good, and the 10% that might make it for another 5 years, you replace at that point, then and it's at a time when someone's selling the house, we're going to make the profit on the house anyways. Or is your goal to say we want to let the 90 that were no good go, just so the 10% that could have made it 5 years get a chance to do it?
No, you didn't answer my question, Dick. What is the youngest tank out there in town that's 1,000 gallons?
Oh,
Do you think there's one 10 years old that's in existence? Okay. How about,
Oh, well, if you look at when did Title V go in?
well, the newest Title V was 95.
Well,
That's 30
So-
years ago.
so that's the newest one. And I think,
I remember Bob Sheehan Senior lobbying for a few 1,000-gallon tanks when Bob was still alive.
yeah, I can't remember, Bill.
And I think the situation would be a ledge tank when they have one of these situations where they had high bedrock and they wanted to put in the ledge tank. And I think the
Yeah.
ledge tanks only came in 1,000-gallon tanks at that.
Maybe, but I can't remember ever approving a 1,000-gallon tank on a repair. Now I'm not saying I can't remember having a 1,000-gallon tank retained and used in a repair, but I'm saying I cannot remember ever giving a permit for a 1,000-gallon septic tank. But as a minimum, you just said 95. What happened? What was around in 86?
In 86, you had the 1983 Title V, what I call the light Title V was in existence from 83 to 95. It had the old loading factors, the old EPA loading factors. And I think in that version of Title V, you could use a 1,000-gallon tank.
Yeah, see, I don't think so, but,
I have a copy of that. I'll dig it up at some point, look at it.
well, we can bring this one, let's do it for next week, but if you said 96, you're talking about they're at least 30 years old.
Yeah, okay.
But I think if you look it up, I think you're gonna find out that in the 80s, it was 1,500,
Okay.
which then puts it out 40 or 45 years.
You know, the only thing you could do, which is a double-edged sword, is that you could tell the 1,000-gallon tank, you can keep the 1,000 with the provision that you put in an effluent filter. The problem with that is a one compartment tank and an effluent filter. You got to design the effluent filter very, very carefully. You just
Yeah.
cannot use you can't use any old effluent filter. With a two compartment, you can use any effluent filter. You're not going to have
Yeah.
a problem. With a one compartment, you got to be very, very careful.
Yeah,
But anyway,
we can come back to this.
yeah, we'll talk about that
next
next
week.
time. Yeah.
Okay.
The next one is the called high water table must be determined by a licensed soil evaluator doing a soil evaluation witnessed by a representative of the Granby Board of Health. The determination could have been made up to 10 years before the Title V inspection. We could go, the thing, if it's a Title V guy that did it, I mean, if it's a soil evaluator, maybe you don't put any date. Maybe you cross out the determination could be made at least up to 10 years. Maybe you just say it could have been made anytime.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
What do we think about the rule in general?
I think it's good.
Do we want to get rid of the date?
Yeah, what year was that enacted, Dick? 98?
What one this one that we had, our regulation, this is, I don't know how long we've had this.
But again, it wasn't many years after the whole bit with soil evaluators was promulgated.
Right.
So we didn't really think too much about what's going to happen 30 years out. Well, it's now
Oh.
30 years out.
That's right.
So you're right. I think we got to get rid of the date because if it was done appropriately back in 95 and it's 30 years hence, it's still fine.
Porta, what do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, the date part of it, yeah, we could say bye to that. I think the basic information of having it done professionally at some point in time is what we're after. And it should carry forward as long as it was done obviously correctly from the get-go.
Yeah.
Whether it's 2 years or 20 years old, it's still valid data.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my thought on that. Yeah.
The next one is one that we just talked about, but the subsurface soil absorption system must be replaced if there's less than 24 inches of separation between its bottom and the called high water groundwater. I moved that. Today up until I wrote this, we had 36 inches.
Well, okay, but that's the topic we're gonna kick around next week. Is that, or I'm sorry, in 2 weeks, is that
Yeah,
correct?
Dick, I would recommend that you and Lee review those Connecticut. I sent you three
Okay. Yep.
images from the Connecticut code that you got to study. You got to study those very carefully.
Okay, I
please.
will do that. So we'll skip that.
I've got those.
Now, here's one that we don't have. And that it's one where the system is grossly undersized. So that I'm saying the subsurface soil absorption system must be replaced if its capacity is less than 60% of the current design standard for the potential use of the structure. Now, do we want to have, we've got one that Greg Everson, I think it was Greg, I shouldn't think, some guy on New Ludlow Road went and he did an inspection and he had all that was left of the leach field was 18 inches of clay pipe. And the inspector said, I can't find anything in here that says this is no good. And he says it's a pass.
So the clay pipe didn't go to any chamber or anything?
Didn't do anything.
Wow.
Maybe someone, it was on New Ludlow Road, it was in sand. It may be that there was one old person that lived there, but he said, look at none of the things that you talk about for Title V fail, so it passes. And he said the size of the system, none of that matters. And he's right, that's what Title V said. And when I said 60%, you could put 50%, you could put none. You could just say this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how small it is. Or you could say,
There's a problem with issuing a percentage because then you've got to guesstimate what the loading factor is to do the calculation. So you
well, I
can
did
give
it
them
on based on the potential use of the building. Bill.
Yeah,
That's the way I did
yeah.
it.
But give them the benefit of the doubt, give them 0.74, figure out how many square feet you have, do the calculation, show it's only 2% of the required area, and then he's failed.
Well, what is the number that if we're going to do it? What is the number? You want to put 50%?
Whatever you guys think, I'm good with any of those numbers.
Well, you're the scientist, so you're
Well, I
gonna
don't
make
know, Dick. What do you think? 60 seems like an unusual number. Why don't we do like a round number, like 50% is a nice round number.
for
let's-
50%.
Let's go, let's do
gives you-
50, let's do 50%. It's a nice.
What do you
round
think,
number.
Lee?
Yeah, 50 works. I mean,
Okay.
because at that point in time, they have to grab an engineer anyway, and they're gonna have to bring it up to code and include, of course, the loading factor, soil, water table, the whole bit. But yeah, there does seem to be a gap here where you can have 3 feet of pipe running to nowhere and it's functioning.
Yeah, I'm
Somehow.
guessing what the engineer would do is they'd go in there with a hand auger, grab a sample of the representative soil under the leach field, bring it to the lab, have a sieve analysis done, figure out where in the textural triangle it fits, assign a USDA soil group, come up with the appropriate loading factor, run the calculation and see what happens. That's the way to do that.
More than likely, what he's gonna do is some kind of wing it, and he's gonna say, this is a class 1 or class 2 soil,
Well,
and
they-
we're gonna, and
well,
if you've only given me,
they better do better than that. They better substantiate that instead of guessing, at least grab a sample for crying out loud.
and it turns out it's only gonna be, we're not gonna have many of these that are like that. We're only catching the bad ones, because most of these that we have are all Title V systems
Right, that's right.
that already done.
Yeah, that's a good question, Dick. Out of all the systems in town, how many systems do you think have not been upgraded since 95? What percentage?
Good question.
You mean just a wing it?
Yours and mine are in that ballpark.
Yeah.
Would you say
But-
20%, 10%, 5%?
I would guess it would be in the 20% range.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny because that's about the same number I was gonna say. There's a lot of older houses that have simply been in the family and never been touched.
Yeah, but as you go down the road and you look at whether there are new houses or old houses around, and in fact, a couple months ago, I just was driving around. I said, you know what? If you look back since I've been on this board, what this town looked like before, and the times that during new perk season that I do 120 perks, and you say, wow, this is really changed. So just, plus some of those got fixed. So I think the number, I think it's well under 25%.
Okay. So 1 in 5, roughly, 1 in 5.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
I think that's fair, yeah.
The next one that I hear all this stuff that the engineers talk, and I don't think there are many left. And it's cesspool. And I just said cesspools should be replaced. And in our town, more than likely, they're not working right. They're probably below the water table. They're and if you ask how many cesspools there are, I would be really surprised if it's 1 out of 50.
Yeah, Dick, cesspools are typically 6 feet deep, maybe 5 feet deep, maybe only 4 feet deep. But the problem is that means the bottom of the cesspool is probably 6 to 7 feet below grade. And unless you're in an area with a super low water table, they wouldn't even function,
Right.
right? So
Right.
I can support that.
How about you, Lee?
Absolutely, yes.
We also have the last one we have is a potable water test, including nitrogen, must be conducted on lots served by a shallow well or lots with loadings of more than 110 gallons per day per 10,000 square feet. That's I think that's our current regulation.
I think that's prudent. That's prudent practice. I think that's good. That is
Yes.
good.
Well, we can come back to the other. What time we're getting? Oh, we're late now.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to stop.
Yeah, we better knock it off for tonight.
So our next meeting, I think we're gonna be safe. I don't think we're gonna have to meet face to face.
No, I think we're good. Oh, by the way, and I got notice of this for conservation next month. On the 8th, there's some sort of town meeting. So we've moved conservation to April 9th. So we can't meet, I don't think we can meet the 8th either.
If it's town meeting, we can't.
Yeah, there's some sort of, Kathy Leonard said we can't meet on the 8th. At least she told conservation that yesterday.
Huh.
Do you know
So
what that is?
Colleen, you might want to check into that.
Oh, I think there is a special town meeting. They're
Okay,
discussing the new, the West Street building
Oh.
there.
Well,
And,
that's tonight. Isn't there an informational meeting tonight?
oh, there is an
Leon?
informational meeting tonight, yes, but then
Yeah.
they're going to have a town meeting regarding the funds to either knock the school down or renovate the school.
Okay, Dick, have they approached you on the leach field about that?
No. I can't.
Mark Bale did have a question.
We don't
about
even want to go there.
functionality.
We don't want to go there
Good news.
now.
That place is, if you want to see where the leach field is, do you know where it is? If you go
I think it's.
from the center of
Oh,
town,
oh,
yeah, on Crescent Street from the center of town, up above as you start down the hill, above the old salt shed, you'll
Oh,
see a little flat area
oh,
tucked in the rock.
oh,
And my understanding is that whole field behind the school, that level field where the ball fields are, you can't dig a hole in there. And that they actually went that on the north side of that field is an outcropping that runs from West Street to the northeast over to Crescent Street. And this is on the other side of the outcropping, still in the outcropping.
Wow.
So they're not down into the flat below it that's got high water table with sand. So my guess is, and it's a little system. So,
And I think Obrimski couldn't sell him any land because I think he's in 61A.
ah,
So that's gonna be another issue if they want to get land from Obrimski.
yeah,
Oh, boy, okay, that's gonna be an expensive system.
yeah.
Enough said.
So,
Yeah, I was
okay, so we're,
curious, the architect's trying to put budget numbers together for this, and they haven't even entertained the leach field on this
I
project.
don't understand it at all.
Yeah,
So in terms of this, so we had moved our meeting to avoid yours still.
yeah,
We moved ours from the 8th to the 9th, but now you've moved yours to the 9th. Do we move ours to Monday the 7th?
that's fine with me, that's fine.
Sure,
Lee, what,
sure.
okay, do you want to also
Oh, yeah.
go 6:45?
Yeah, if you guys want to, that's more than fine.
Okay. And I will do Zoom, assuming that this passes, and my understanding it is gonna.
Well, the governor said we're good for 2 years regardless of whether or not it passes in the House of Representatives.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I think we're good for 2 years. Didn't you read it that way, Colleen? There was a statement put
I
out
think
by
it
the
got
governor's
signed,
office.
yeah, it got signed and then it was going to the governor's desk to be
But there was a
signed.
temporary
said he was
measure
gonna
that's good for
sign it.
2 years, yeah.
So, okay.
Everything's
So
good.
now let's go on to our rest of our stuff. First one is minutes. Are we okay with the minutes?
Yes, I reviewed them, yes.
Yes.
And I am too, Colleen, so
Okay.
those are good.
Okay,
Colleen, time sheet, Colleen has got a normal 70-hour sheet. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Bill?
That's good, yes, of course.
I am too, Colleen, so that's
Okay.
approved.
thanks.
The next one is the accounts payable. We've got $920 of that, 470 are Board of Health permits, 450 Board of Health licenses, and that's it. 920 for March 25th. Are we okay with that one?
That's good.
I am
Yes.
too. The next one is temporary food license for the Granby Preservation Society. It's a one-day temporary food license for May 10th, 2025 for the May Craft Fair. Are we set with that?
I'm good.
Yes. Yep, yep.
I am too. So that's approved. Colin.
Okay.
The next one is, I'm gonna give you it's like 4 renewals for installation, installer's permits and the renewals. One is, and I'm gonna do them together, and if we have questions, we can look at them. For Excavation Plus, Jerome Talbot of Munson. The next is Brian Roberts doing business as Ludlow Excavating of Ludlow. Then Katawitz Custom Homes, Alan Katawitz of Belchertown. And finally, M. Santos Construction, Manuel Santos. Are we okay with all 4 of those renewals?
Yes.
Yep.
I am too, Colin. So those
Okay.
are all. The next one that I have is a application for well construction permit. It is at Keith Bradway. It says 0 Carver Street. It's map 16 lot. It's like 17, 8, 10. And the location is shown on Alan Weiss's approved drawing. The well is dimensioned from high points, and that's where they're planning to put it for Alan, and we placed it and we approved. Are we okay with that one?
Dick, is that a 60,000 square foot minimum lot?
That is, I think this one, I have to blow it up for me to read it. Lot 10. Alan always has it on here someplace. What happens is I've got Alan sends it to me as a B-size drawing. And this, when I get it here, I'm gonna put my headlamp on so I can get it bright enough to see.
Where'd you get that, Dick?
I might have gotten it, it could be Amazon,
Oh, it's not,
but it's waterproof
those are handy,
and I use it for fishing.
yeah.
Let's see. It is 6.04 acres.
Oh, okay, a non-issue then,
So are we okay with that?
yeah.
Lee, you okay?
Yes, I am, thank you.
The next one is 114 Morgan Street. And this is also by Cushing. This lot, I'm trying to see. This is 38,000, so it's about 10 acres still. And this is the same thing that this is an approved Alan Weiss design that with the well located. And we approved it.
Yeah, I saw that plan come through the other day, yeah, okay.
Lee, are you okay with this too?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Colleen, that's approved.
Okay.
The next one, by the way, I did get called to take a pool on, I think it's 67 Morgan Street or 87 Morgan Street, a barn that got burned down the day before
Oh,
yesterday.
yeah, that Rajon Concrete's place?
Yeah,
Oh, it was?
Yes, it was.
Oh, my
Yeah.
God, they
A
said that
nice-
was a hell of a fire, wow.
it was a nice barn, and when I got
Wow.
there, it was essentially out. They had fire district number 2, and it was really nice to look at the equipment they had. They had, I think, 2 or 3 6-inch hoses feeding it, and they had it must have been, I don't know why fire district number 1 has a ladder truck, but he had a ladder truck with a big gun up on top of it, so they were blowing water down inside of it. And but luckily no one was living in the barn. In fact, Nish was just leaving when I got there, and I think that's her uncle. And she said that he's in Canada, so he wasn't home.
Wow.
But it's a long way away from the house. It's
Yeah.
probably 150 feet back.
I know that was it was a nice barn.
A very nice barn.
Oh,
So-
that's too bad.
The next one that I have is from Jerry Coder for a request for an extension on lots 3 and 5 on Chicopee Street. Both of them were done. Alan Weiss did both of the perk tests. They were done on April 11th, 2023. And they're just looking for the extension. They're sand. One of them perked slower. One was a 4 minute and the other 3 minutes, 4 and 3 minutes. The other was 2 minute stuff, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't extend them to the 4 years, to April 11th, 2027 for both lots.
Yeah, that's fine. Those
Okay.
are across from the gun range.
They are.
Yeah, they might be tough to sell, but that's none of our
They might,
business.
very well be.
Yeah, yeah, we can approve those, of course.
It's a funny little, when you get in there, it really changes soil as you get further to the south. The plateau that's kind of high, that's on the gun range plateau, kind of disappears. It comes into Chicopee Street, and it gets to be really nasty soil as you move up towards the road.
Yeah,
And
you know,
then,
he did some wetland permitting with us a couple of years ago, and you go out about 100 or 200 feet, and then you go down about 15 feet, and it flattens out again.
yeah,
So
and
did
there's
you do the
down in
perks
there.
up on the higher plateau or the lower plateau?
Well, they perked at three different areas. Well, actually, it's like four different areas. The main upper plateau, and
Mhm.
then as you move to the south, he kind of scrambled because there's wetlands down on
Yeah,
that southern side. It
There's
drops
some,
down toward,
there's some soil that had been moved around in there.
yeah, and then as you move towards like the middle of the lot and drop down there, Bill, there's a spot, there's a road that goes around, and there's some area that's okay, and then there's a pond of some
Oh,
sort
yeah, there's an
that
isolated pond. There's a weird pond in there. Yes, there
it's
is.
got like it. Well, no, it looks like it's got a system for filling or draining, and it's strange. And then you go further to the west, and it goes into I think it's a pine forest that was planted. It was a forest that you'd expect that people doing water conservation would put, those dense pine forests
Yeah, yeah.
that they plant. So there's a whole bunch of stuff happening in there, but it's fine for these lots.
Okay, okay.
I've got two Title V. One of them is the one that I did that I witnessed on 6th Wood Avenue. They did do it ended up that whole thing almost didn't happen. And at the last minute, they said, yeah, we'll do it. The lawyers were involved, and they also dug down, and we went down like 10 feet, and there was no water, and it really was a pass. And Neil Jackson sent that in. The next one is 4 Porter Street. Now that's Peterson's house. That's
Yes.
the one that we were dealing
Oh.
with that
Oh, yeah, they want to put in the antique auction, the auction house.
right.
Yeah.
Now it looks like they must be selling it.
Oh,
And it looked like it's a 1,500 gallon tank. Now there's a case where it's 5 bedrooms with what was it, a 20 by 45 bed, so it's not a very big system. But looked like it was
That was Alan Weiss.
actually,
Yeah.
where is the system with respect to the street and looking at the house?
To the right of the driveway.
Oh, so you were right, Lee. When we said that people are going to be parking cars on the system, you were absolutely right then.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, yeah, only because I had been there with Alan during the install, but yeah, it was just nowhere to accommodate that business enterprise in that location.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, it was it passed, and since it was a modern Title V repair,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it wasn't a problem with septic tank size, and it wasn't a problem with water table. So are we okay with both of those?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep.
That's good.
By the way, both Neil and Alan told me that lots of towns are now taking these Title V inspections seriously. That they're putting conditions on them and just not taking what the state says is a Title V pass. So next,
What do you mean?
Well, towns are looking and saying, you know, if the water table's too high, they're not letting it go. If they're looking at tank size, if they're looking at the size of the leach field being, you know, grossly undersized, that they're saying, oh, you're gonna have to fix this.
So some towns were just going strictly by the 15 CMR 310 criterion? Really?
Yeah, kind of like what we were doing, saying, you know, if the state says this is a pass, and you just
Yeah.
let it go instead of saying,
Huh.
let's read what it really says on the regulations, and and we ought to learn about what it
Yeah.
says.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't look at the 8 West Street, West State Street dumpster. Has anybody looked at that on the neighbor's property line?
I did a drive-by the other day. There's a green dumpster literally on the property line. It can't be any more than 15 to 20 feet to the fellow's door at his apartment. It's right next to his apartment.
Huh.
And I guess he was complaining about odors, Colleen, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's afraid of when he's gonna be opening his windows that
Yeah.
there will be the
yeah.
odors. It's so
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, I didn't do an extensive review, Dick, but I drove by and I looked at it, and it's sure enough, there's a dumpster right on the property line near the fellow's front door on his apartment.
Is it worthwhile to ask Colleen just to give a call and
Yes.
ask them if they can move it?
Yes, yeah, call what's 413 dumpster. He's a nice guy. Give him a call.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
So we've got what? Colleen, you've got PH emergency preparedness.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at that, but that's something that was sent. It's a framework for the standards duties, and they recommended doing with the entire board. I mean, I don't know I mean, there's a lot of questions here. I don't know who handles all of this, would handle all of this for Granby. It kind of does have a suggestion I mean, Chris Martin was the emergency management director, right? So a lot of that, I guess, maybe falls with that, like the TA, but I just wasn't sure who to put in these spots for.
Is it more disaster preparedness type stuff?
Yeah, prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response, recovery. So it's a lot of questions that I'm not
Wow.
sure.
So it's kind of
You
like
know,
if there was a plane crash at Westover, something humongous.
Something, I
like
think
that.
so, for,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah. You know, we used to do that with Jeff McPherson, but I don't know if Jeff
I didn't
lives
see
in
the only
town.
names I found
I
was
think I
Chris.
saw him in Dunkin' Donuts about 6 months ago, Dick. I think he's still around.
I would definitely make the call maybe to Ira and
Oh, no,
say,
Ivan Brzezinski's not, they fired him. He's gone.
you're kidding.
They released him last Monday at the selectmen's meeting. Chris Martin is acting town manager now. That's my
I'll give-
understanding. That's my understanding. Chris's car was at town hall yesterday.
Yeah, he is filling
Okay.
until the
I
new
was
person.
with Jeremy Carrier on a project, and we chit-chatted about it for about 5 minutes.
Do you want me to give Chris a call and see about what this
Yes.
is?
Please do, please do.
Okay, I will do that.
You know, another guy in town that's retired from Amherst Fire who did all their code work was Michael Roy over on Bachelor.
Of course, we
Whether or
got
not
Russ
he's
Anderson back
looking-
on board too, Dick.
Saw that. I saw that in the paper.
Yeah, Russ is terrific. He's back. I'm guessing he won't want to get involved with something like this, but I'm glad they got him as a temporary fire chief. That's fabulous.
And so he's only temporary.
Yeah.
It's not a full,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. Okay, let me start with Chris
Okay.
and
I'll send him this, Excel sheet, just so he's aware of what you're talking about when,
okay.
When the sky opens up, yeah.
So it ended up that I did a lot of calling and talking to Brian O'Toole about Wood Avenue when the owner had an attorney and it finally, as we went back and forth, we were getting close to the point of saying, Neil and actually Brian looked at the meeting that we had where I said to Neil, Neil, you wrote down that the thing passed when you didn't look at the tank and you didn't know where the water table is, but you signed off saying it passed and that it's your name on it. And what, as we went back and forth with Brian and me, that we were getting close to saying, if the Board of Health could come to the stand that's saying, the water table looks like it's not so close to the bottom of the leach field that it's going to cause an environmental problem. And you think the tank isn't really a problem that's so bad that you think it's an environmental problem, that maybe you just ought to say, Neil, you're the one that worked for the person. You're the one that signed off on it. You're the one that has a license to do this. If you want to wear it, it doesn't say any place in the code that the Board of Health has to do something about this. And if it fails, you'll be the one that
That's right. Yeah,
carries it
it
slow.
goes to civil. It's a civil case. That's exactly what.
Yeah, and I said to Brian, I said, Brian, we can always send out a letter to the owner and the real estate agent saying, we're going to have a regulation that says that the water table should be checked and that the tanks should be replaced, but we don't have it. But we think that a 40 or 50-year-old tank is not one that you could expect not to be problematic. And just send it out and then let Neil, and when it goes bad, if Neil thinks it's good, let Neil, if the courts feel that someone should pay for it other than the new owner, then let them deal with Neil. And Brian said, it's not really fair to have the town keep his clock running and billing. And as it turns out, it kind of fell into place and we could get it done. But anyways, that's what it is. So
That's it.
with that,
Dick, did you happen to review the changes on 1 Jennifer Drive? Was that?
we did not do that.
Okay, I was
should,
just wondering if you had done it. You just let me
I-
know when it's good.
I did not. I will look at it
Yep.
and
Okay,
so I will do that. I'll see if I can do that tomorrow.
Yeah, Dick, one thing on the
Yeah.
1 Jennifer Drive, if you look at the cross section, it shows a new trench going in on top of an old trench, but there is some language in the document that says the old trenches shall be removed. But I'm guessing the contractor may not read it that carefully, so you better emphasize the fact that those old leach trenches shall be removed prior to bringing in the fill for the new trenches.
I will tell them that because I've already told them. And I also told them, I said, you need to put in there that he needs, because he put in that he wanted to inspect the bottom after they put the sand in before they put the units in. And I told him exactly that same thing, Bill, that I said, you got called out that you're gonna remove some trenches. I said, you need to look at that hole when those trenches have been stripped. You don't want to wait till someone's thrown sand on it. And I said, the Board of Health has to see it too. and you need to put it on the drawing. So I'll make sure it's there, and I'll make sure that,
Good.
and hopefully whoever puts it in will need a new license from us, and we
Yeah.
can talk to them about it.
Okay.
How's your eye?
Hold on one second, Dick. Hold on one second. I gotta answer this call. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So actually what we could do is we could, if Bill's not fast enough, we'll say good night for him.
I'm surprised you told me that Neil was back on Wood Avenue, because last week he made note to let me know for sure that he had resigned and quit that job.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, Neil told me that. He
Um,
says, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna say that I'm rescinding the drawing and my report. And I said, you know, Neil, that thing's in our file. I said, you can't just send something in and then say, oh, I changed my mind, and go pick it up and tell Colleen you're gonna go in our files and rip the stuff up. I said, if you've got something that says your report is not accurate, put something in writing and get it on our file that it's not accurate. But you can't go into our files and take stuff out that's public record and throw it away. So,
Well, yeah, that's he was a little bit upset with the current landowner about the process. But I'm glad
yeah,
that
I told him, I said, you know, Neil, if the thing goes to a lawyer or goes to a court, I said, I certainly would testify that the truth, that the board has a policy, and told you, and I told you that we were gonna make 1,000-gallon tanks be replaced with 1,500. I said, that's what we told you. So for you to be acting on that, that's what's the truth. I said, where it falls, but that's what the truth is. So
yeah,
anyway.
I mean, that's basically all there is. Yeah, that's the ideology of the whole thing.
Yeah, and I said, I believe that even Lee said on the record that while he was out there, that he told you that the tank was going to have to be replaced. I said, I think that's on record. And I said, so.
Yeah, we did mention that right then and there.
Yeah, but I said the problem still comes out. You shouldn't put your name on things that says something that's not true.
Sure.
So.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
It looks like it did get resolved. So other than that, so Bill, you're.
So Dick, following up on my eye, the acuity's good, but I'm getting a little cloudiness in my right eye. So he may have to do a couple more laser shots.
Yeah.
Have
So
you
don't
ever heard
worry
of
about
that?
it when it happens. That, as I said, that is truly a non-event. That I had unfortunately, he said it happens out of 50% of the eyes. And
Okay,
it happened on both of mine. But
okay,
it is a procedure that you drive your car to.
yeah.
It puts you in this little closet.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. I've had it done for glaucoma, so I'm used to that.
Oh yeah,
procedure.
okay.
So did it get rid of the cloudiness?
Oh yeah, it did. It
Oh, good.
absolutely did.
Oh, good. Okay, that's good. That's good then.
And it's all done. It's not, and it's a kind of thing that you go in with it and you go out when you're all better. You drive
Oh,
home.
good.
You don't
Oh,
need it.
good.
You don't need anybody to drive you. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, okay.
Doesn't do anything.
Okay, good. That's good news then.
So
Yeah, because right after the procedure, it was really good, and then it started getting a little cloudy, and it's been getting cloudier every week. So I think
Yeah.
in July, he's going to give it a couple of zaps, so that'll be fine.
yeah,
Okay, no
Yeah.
worries though. But
No.
the acuity's terrific.
yeah. And so my knee, I got my sign off today, my 5-week sign off.
Wow.
And he said, you know, some people are lucky. He said, some people end up being superhuman performers. He said, you have to be a superhuman performer. That I
Wow.
can walk up and down stairs. I can do anything I want. It's just
Wow.
and
So,
so at
so
5 weeks out.
no noise, no creaking, no pain.
No.
It's
Oh,
excellent.
and he says the only thing, he said, he says that they've got some things that they didn't try on me. He thought they did, but he says, we didn't try it. But they've got some nerve thing that he says works, but he says, he says too much of this is kind of undeterminable when you do this. He says I can end up with two people with the same exact X-rays and everything that, as far as we can tell, is the same, and you get different results. And he says it's really strange. And he said when I talk to the other surgeons about the same thing, and he says that's what's happening. He says there's not enough known about what's causing this. And he says some of it maybe is me not being good enough and understanding enough what I should be doing with the nerves that are running in there. He said, I'm not positive. He says, but we're finding that it looks like people with strong quadriceps do way better. So maybe the 40 minutes a day that I spend on the bike
Excellent.
does it. But I had also told him, I said, when I stopped going to the physical therapist, that I was up to, and I said, I've got a physical therapy table in my living room. On it, I've got a board with tape and measurements. And what Chris does is there's one thing where you put a strap on your ankle and you pull it back to stretch your ligaments. And I don't know if I told you, but the last test that they gave me, I could flex to 138 degrees.
You were telling me
And-
it's time. Yeah.
And I had asked them, I said, what's the number that you guys get on the last days? And they said, they said, sometimes we get people that are as good as you at 138 degrees.
Hmm.
And I said, well, I can probably still be pulling and stretching it. And then when I got home, my son asked me, he says, what do you think is a good number that you should be shooting for? And he looked it up and he says, they're happy with anything over 100 degrees. 120 is really happy. And I said, well, now that you say that, we ought to look at what the joints, let me look up in the joint design and see what the joint's good for. And joint's only good for 150 degrees. And so when I talked to the doctor,
Can you do sit-ups?
I don't do, that's not one of my exercises. I do leg lifts and I do squats, but I don't do sit-ups. I should do that for my stomach.
Yeah, yeah.
But
How about deep knee bends?
I probably go down to about 10 degrees below horizontal to the floor. So
Okay.
not deep. Not deep, because I do that every morning. That's one of the things I have to do 3 reps of 10
Mhm.
with that. But when I told him that, I said, I decided maybe I better stop pulling and trying to stretch some more. He says, yeah. He says, that's a very good deal. He says, don't keep stretching that
The
thing.
boss is here.
I saw him. Is that a syringe in him?
No, she's
What?
got her E-tube. She's got a little E-tube.
Oh,
Yep,
so that's that's
she
her-
gets her meds. She's doing really well. Her creatinine numbers down. She's really chipper. She's doing really well.
her port.
Oh yeah, that's her feeding port.
Huh.
Yeah, and you just got to maintain it. I go in for maintenance every once in a while, and it's really super easy to use. You can give her the right food, you can give her meds, you can give her water, but she eats on her own as well. But the nice thing about this, Dick, is you can give her the proper meds, and you don't have to worry about them running away from you.
Yeah.
So it's a good system, believe me.
And it doesn't seem to bother her.
No,
So,
she gets used to it.
Okay. If that's it, I'll let all of us go. Huh?
Okay,
So
guys,
we're saying Monday the
the
7th, right?
7th of April, yeah.
7th of
Yep,
Monday, quarter
at
7.
6:45. Okay, I will do that, and I will. So Colleen, if you could do us a favor and cancel what do we have, a reservation
Yes,
for
I will.
the library?
The old library. I will.
Okay, if you could do that. And how are you feeling, Colleen?
yes, good. Everything worked out good. So thank you.
Okay. Have a good night, everybody.
Excellent, everyone. Okay, thank
You
you all.
too. Okay,
Okay, bye now.
bye-bye.
Good night, folks.